The warehouse smelled like rust and old oil, the kind of stink that clings to your clothes and stays in your nostrils for days. Bare bulbs dangled from frayed cords overhead, throwing weak yellow pools across the cracked concrete floor. Shadows stretched long and jagged, like fingers reaching for something they couldn't quite touch. In the center of the cavernous space sat a single wooden chair, its legs bolted to the ground. On it was Grandma Maggie. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back so tight the plastic had already cut into the thin skin of her forearms, leaving thin red lines that glistened under the light. A strip of duct tape sealed her mouth, the adhesive pulling at the delicate wrinkles around her lips. Her white hair, usually pinned neatly, hung loose and damp with sweat. Those eyes, sharp, knowing eyes that had seen fires and poverty and still found reasons to smile, were wide with fear. But not for herself. They were locked on Grace, the granddaughter who had just walked through the heavy steel door into hell. Grace stood maybe 15 feet away, hands raised slightly, palms out, the way you approach a wild animal that might bolt or bite. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she could feel it in her throat, a rhythmic thud, thud, thud that drowned out almost everything else. Almost. Anthony Ricci stepped out from behind a stack of rusted shipping crates. 50-something, gray streaked through dark hair, a long scar running from his left temple down his cheek like someone had tried to erase half his face and failed. He wore a charcoal suit that looked expensive but was rumpled, as if he'd slept in it waiting for this moment. In his right hand was a matte black Beretta 92 FS, the barrel pointed casually at Grace's chest. "So this is the blonde girl," Ricci said, voice low and amused, the Brooklyn accent thick as tar. "The one Moretti's willing to burn the city down for. Gotta say, I expected more." Grace swallowed. Her mouth tasted like pennies. Copper, blood, fear. She forced her eyes to stay on Ricci, not on Maggie, because if she looked at her grandmother too long, she'd break. "What do you want?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Ricci laughed, a short, dry sound that echoed off the corrugated metal walls. "What do I want? I want Vincent Moretti to feel what I felt when he took my wife, when he took my territory, when he made me the punchline of every sit-down from here to Atlantic City." He took 2 slow steps forward. The gun never wavered. "You're the message, sweetheart. The final fucking punctuation. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos." Behind him, 2 of his men shifted, big guys in black windbreakers, Glock 19 seconds already drawn, eyes flicking between Grace and the doors. Somewhere deeper in the warehouse, a generator hummed, low and constant, like the building itself was breathing. Grace's mind raced. The microphone hidden under the collar of her blouse felt like it weighed 10 pounds. She knew Vincent and Marcus were listening. She knew they were out there in the dark, 200 yards away, waiting for the signal. All she had to do was buy time. "You think killing me will hurt him?" she asked, forcing calm into her tone. "You think that'll make you win?" Ricci tilted his head, studying her like she was a mildly interesting insect. "Nah. Killing you will make him suffer. And that's close enough." He raised the gun higher, aligning the sights with the center of her chest. Grace saw the tiny black hole at the end of the barrel, perfectly round, perfectly empty. Time slowed. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. The air tasted thick, metallic, every sound sharpened. The drip-drip of a leaking pipe somewhere above. The faint creak of Maggie shifting against her restraints. The soft click of Ricci's thumb, flicking the safety off. She thought of the night it all began. Rain hammering the roof of her Brooklyn walk-up. 23 crumpled dollars on the floor. The knock at the door at midnight. A soaked man carrying a feverish little girl. Blood on his sleeve. She'd opened that door because a child needed help. And now here she was, a year later, staring down the barrel of a gun because of that same kindness. Ricci's finger tightened on the trigger. Grace closed her eyes. Then the world exploded. A flashbang grenade detonated somewhere near the rear loading dock. White light so bright it burned through her eyelids, followed by a concussive boom that slammed into her chest like a fist. The sound was physical, a wall of noise that left her ears ringing, high-pitched and endless. She tasted gunpowder before she even smelled it, sharp, acrid, like burnt matches and hot metal. Shouts erupted, boots pounding concrete, glass shattering overhead as sniper rounds punched through skylights. Someone screamed in Italian. Another voice, Marcus, barked orders in clipped English. Grace dropped to her knees, hands over her ears, but the ringing wouldn't stop. She opened her eyes just in time to see Ricci swing the Beretta toward her again. His mouth was open in a snarl, scar twisting into something grotesque under the strobing muzzle flashes. The gun bucked. The bullet left the chamber in slow motion, a glowing streak of copper-jacketed death. Grace felt the air move hot, violent past her left ear. The slug missed by inches, punching into the wall behind her with a dull thwack and a spray of concrete dust. Then Vincent Moretti came through the side door like judgment itself. He moved low, black coat flaring, Glock 17 inches, a two-handed grip. His face was stone, eyes locked on Ricci. No hesitation, no mercy. He fired once. Center mass. Ricci's shoulder jerked back, blood blooming dark across the charcoal suit. The Beretta clattered to the floor. Chaos swallowed the room. Moretti's men poured in from three directions, automatic weapons chattering, muzzle flashes lighting the warehouse like strobe lights. Ricci's crew returned fire, bullets ricocheting off steel beams, sparking against concrete. One of them went down hard, clutching his thigh. Another took a round to the vest and kept shooting. Grace scrambled toward Maggie, knees scraping on the filthy floor. The older woman's eyes were huge above the duct tape. Grace reached her, fingers shaking as she tore the tape away, careful, gentle, even now. "Grandma," Maggie coughed, voice hoarse. "Get down, child." A bullet whined past overhead, close enough that Grace felt the heat of it. She shoved Maggie's chair sideways, tipping it behind a stack of pallets for cover. Wood splintered above them as rounds tore through the crates. Across the room, Vincent advanced like a force of nature. He put 2 more rounds into the man who'd tried to flank him, then pivoted toward Ricci, who was on his knees now, clutching his bleeding shoulder, face pale with shock and fury. "You son of a..." Ricci started. Vincent kicked the dropped Beretta away, then pressed the muzzle of his Glock to Ricci's forehead. "Shut up," Vincent said quietly. The words carried over the gunfire, calm and cold. Grace watched it all in fragments. The way Vincent's jaw clenched, the way his finger hovered on the trigger, the way Ricci's eyes finally showed fear. Then silence, sudden, shocking. The shooting stopped. Bodies lay scattered. The generator still hummed. Somewhere, a pipe dripped. Vincent lowered the gun. He turned, found Grace's eyes across the smoke and dust. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then he was moving toward her long strides, coat billowing, blood on his knuckles from God knows what. He reached her, dropped to one knee, hands framing her face, searching for wounds. "Are you hit?" His voice cracked on the last word. Grace shook her head, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her cheeks. "I'm okay." "Maggie." Marcus was already there, cutting Maggie's zip ties with a folding knife, murmuring soft reassurances in a voice too gentle for a man who'd just cleared a room of armed men. Vincent pulled Grace into his arms, hard, desperate, like he might never let go. "You're safe," he whispered into her hair. "You're both safe." But Grace, pressed against his chest, could hear the lie beneath the words, because the bullet that missed her had left a hole in the wall behind her. And in that moment, she knew. Kindness had brought her here. Kindness had almost killed her. Kindness had saved her. As the last echoes of gunfire faded and the warehouse filled with the sound of sirens in the distance, Grace looked up at Vincent's face, blood-streaked, exhausted, alive, and wondered one terrible thing. How many more miracles could kindness afford? Like this video if you've ever risked everything for someone you love. Because sometimes the biggest dangers don't come from the storm outside. They come from the door you choose to open. The rain came down in sheets that night. The kind of New York rain that doesn't just fall, it attacks. It hammered the aluminum awnings of the old brownstones on Gates Avenue like thousands of tiny fists, each drop exploding into a metallic crackle that echoed through the narrow street. Grace Mitchell sat cross-legged on the cold linoleum of her one-bedroom walk-up. 5th floor, no elevator, the kind of building where the hallway lights flickered like they were on their last breath. She was counting the money again. $23, 3 crumpled 10s, 2 5s, and 3 singles, so worn they felt like tissue paper. She smoothed them out on the floor, one by one, as if the friction might multiply them. It didn't. The eviction notice taped to the inside of her door had been there for 3 days now, red ink, bold letters. 5 days. to pay $900 plus $250 in late fees, or the marshal would be back with the locks changed. 5 days. Today was day 4. Outside, the storm raged. Thunder rolled low and long over Brooklyn, the sound vibrating through the thin walls. Lightning flashed, turning the room stark white for a split second, illuminating the bare essentials. A sagging couch with one cushion missing its cover, a small kitchen table scarred from years of meals that never happened, a single folding chair, a hot plate that still worked if you jiggled the cord just right. The refrigerator hummed weakly, half empty. 1 can of Bush's baked beans, half a loaf of Wonder Bread going stale, a single packet of ramen noodles she'd been saving for tomorrow's breakfast. That was it. Grace's stomach growled a low, familiar ache she'd learned to ignore. She wore 2 sweaters layered over a thin t-shirt. The heat shut off 2 weeks ago. The landlord had said something about building-wide repairs, but everyone knew it was just another way of saying he'd rather pocket the money than fix the boiler. The window rattled in its frame every time the wind gusted, rain smearing the glass in long, dirty streaks. She could smell the wet asphalt rising up from the street below, mixed with the faint, greasy scent of pizza from Tony's on the corner, the one place that still stayed open late even in weather like this. Somewhere down the block, a car stereo thumped faintly, Jay-Z's 99 Problems, the bass cutting through the storm like a heartbeat. It was September 2005, 4 years after the towers fell, and Brooklyn still hadn't caught its breath. The city had changed security everywhere. Patriotism, bumper stickers fading on car trunks, but the economy hadn't recovered for people like Grace. Mount Sinai had laid off 24 nurses in the spring. Budget constraints, they'd called it. Last in, first out. She'd been there 4 years, never late, never a complaint, worked every holiday shift without asking twice. None of it mattered. No connections, no union pull, no doctor to vouch for her, just another black girl from Bed-Stuy who'd climbed out of the projects on scholarships and night classes, only to get pushed back down. She'd sent out 53 applications since May. 53. Not one callback. Her nursing license was current. Her scrubs still folded neatly in the dresser drawer, but the world had decided she wasn't needed anymore. Or maybe it had decided she was too expensive, too brown, too female, too something. Grace folded the money again, tucked it into the pocket of her hoodie, and stood. Her legs ached from sitting on the floor too long. She walked to the kitchen, opened the cabinet above the sink, stared at the empty shelves. Then she closed it, leaned her forehead against the cool wood, and closed her eyes. Grandma Maggie. The thought hit her like another crack of thunder. Maggie was 79, frail, diabetic, congestive heart failure creeping in slow and steady. Sunrise Nursing Home in East New York charged $15,000 in back payments before they'd even talk about keeping her past the end of the month. The monthly meds, insulin, Lasix, beta blockers, ran $400 if you bought generic. Grace had sold everything. Her mother's wedding ring, the little gold cross necklace Maggie had given her at confirmation, the laptop she'd used for school, even the decent winter coat she'd bought when she got her first real paycheck. Nothing left to sell. Nothing left to do but pray. The numbers changed. She'd thought about the church on Fulton Mount Calvary Baptist, where Maggie used to sing in the choir before her knees gave out. Pastor Reynolds would help, she knew that. But pride was a stubborn thing. She'd raised herself on Maggie's lessons. Stand tall. Don't beg. Don't break. Stupid pride. What good was pride when your grandmother might die because you couldn't pay for pills? Grace opened her eyes, walked back to the living room, and sank onto the couch. She pulled the thin blanket over her lap threadbare, patched in places, the one Maggie had crocheted when Grace was 7, after the fire that took her parents. That night was still sharp in memory. The heat, the smoke, the scream of sirens, Maggie bursting through the front door, coughing, burned arms outstretched. She dragged Grace out, collapsed on the sidewalk, spent 3 months in the burn unit, and then she'd raised her. 2 jobs days at the laundromat, nights cleaning offices in Manhattan, books for school, food on the table, church every Sunday. Maggie had been mother, father, fortress. Now she was fading, and Grace couldn't even keep the lights on. The thunder cracked again, closer this time. The building shook. Somewhere downstairs, a baby cried. Distant sirens wailed cops, fire, ambulance, the usual Brooklyn lullaby. In the street below, tires hissed on wet pavement. A group of kids shouted something in Spanish. laughter cutting through the rain. Life kept moving, even when yours felt like it was stopping. Grace stared at the eviction notice again. The paper had curled at the edges from the humidity. 5 days. She'd have to pack soon. Where she'd go, she didn't know. A shelter, maybe. Or couch surf with one of the girls from the old pediatric ward. But Maggie couldn't be moved. Not like this. She thought about calling someone, anyone. But the phone was 2 months past due, and the landline had been cut. Her cell still worked. Barely prepaid minutes down to 27. She could call the nursing home, beg for another week. They'd say no. They always said no. Lightning flashed again. The room went white. In that instant, Grace saw herself clearly. 25 years old, college degree, nursing license, 4 years of experience, and nothing to show for it but $23 and a dying grandmother. She felt the weight of it all settle on her chest: poverty, grief, guilt, exhaustion. It was heavy, too heavy. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door, firm but not aggressive. Grace froze. It was past midnight. No one knocked at midnight in this neighborhood unless they were police, or trouble, or both. The peephole was cracked, but she stood anyway, heart kicking up again. Through the distorted glass, she saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, black suit soaked through, water streaming off the brim of a fedora he wasn't wearing. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, sharp features, high cheekbones, straight nose, mouth set in a hard line. But it wasn't the man that stopped her breath. It was the child in his arms. A little girl, maybe 5, wrapped in a too big coat. Her face was flushed red, lips pale, eyes closed. She trembled violently, tiny chest rising and falling too fast. And on the man's sleeve, black wool, expensive cut, there was a dark smear. Blood, fresh. Every instinct screamed danger, stranger, midnight, storm, blood, run, lock the door, call someone. But she was a nurse. She recognized the signs before her brain could catch up. High fever, rapid, shallow breathing, mottled skin, limp limbs. The girl was burning up. If the fever spiked any higher, she'd seize. And in this weather, in this neighborhood, an ambulance could take 40 minutes. Grace's hand moved to the lock. She hesitated 1 heartbeat, 2, then turned the deadbolt. The door opened, and the storm rushed in. Cold wind slapped her face, carrying the scent of rain and wet wool and something sharper: gun oil, maybe, or fear. The man stepped inside without asking, cradling the child like she was made of glass. Water dripped from his coat onto the floorboards, pooling around his polished shoes. "Please," he said. 1 word, raw, voice low, rough with something close to panic. "She's burning up. My car got hit 6 blocks from here. Driver's hurt, phone's dead. I saw your light." Grace didn't answer. She stepped aside, closed the door behind him, locked it. The apartment felt smaller instantly. His presence filled it. Broad shoulders, tall frame, the quiet danger that rolled off him like heat from a radiator. "Put her on the couch," Grace said, already moving. Professional, calm, the way she'd been trained. He did, gently, so gently it surprised her. Grace knelt beside the little girl. Hand to the forehead, hot. Dangerously hot. She felt the pulse at the neck. Racing. Checked the pupils, reactive, but sluggish. Breathing. Shallow. Rapid. She knew the signs of febrile seizure waiting in the wings. "How long?" she asked, voice steady. 2 hours. She was fine at dinner. Then she just crashed. Grace didn't ask what restaurant. Didn't ask about the ambush. Didn't ask about the blood on his sleeve. She stood, walked to the bathroom, came back with a basin of cold water, the last clean towel, and the bottle of children's Tylenol she'd kept for neighborhood kids who couldn't afford the ER. She measured the dose with shaking hands she refused to acknowledge, lifted the girl's head. "Sweetheart, can you swallow this for me?" The child's eyes fluttered open, big, brown, glassy. "Mommy," Grace's heart twisted. She looked at the man. His face had gone still, carved from stone. "I'm not your mommy," Grace said softly, "but I'm going to take care of you, okay? Open up." The girl obeyed. 1 spoonful, then another. Grace wiped her face, neck, underarms with the cool cloth, slow circles, watching the temperature drop degree by degree. The man stood like a sentinel, never moving, never speaking, eyes fixed on his daughter. 30 minutes passed, then 45. The fever began to break. Breathing steadied, color returned to the lips. Grace exhaled, long and slow. She's through the worst, but she needs watching. The child stirred, eyes clearer now. Who are you? I'm Grace. Tiny hand reached out, found Grace's. Warm, trusting. Your hand is warm, the girl whispered. Like mommy's used to be. Grace froze. The man turned away, shoulders rigid, one hand clenched at his side. She saw the glint of something wet on his cheek before he wiped it away. In that moment, in the middle of a storm that refused to end, Grace Mitchell knew two things. She had just let a stranger and his daughter into her life, and nothing would ever be the same. The city never slept, but on nights like this, it dreamed in shadows. New York in 2005 was a beast recovering from wounds that wouldn't heal. Towers gone, economy limping, trust fractured. Wall Street boomed for the suits, but down in the streets, from the gleaming Upper East Side to the gritty docks of Red Hook, power wasn't traded in stocks. It was carved out with steel and silence, and no one carved deeper than Vincent Moretti. They called him the Ghost. Not because he vanished, though he could, slipping through FBI raids like smoke through fingers, but because he haunted. East Coast kingpin, head of what was left of the Moretti family after the RICO waves of the 90 seconds had drowned half the old crews. From Boston harbors to Philly warehouses, his word was law. Imports, exports, protection, the quiet skim-off construction sites and trucking lines. He didn't flash. No gold chains, no entourages of goons in tracksuits. Just a black Mercedes S-Class with tinted windows, a tailored suit from a shop on Madison, and eyes that saw everything before it happened. But the Ghost was grieving. 2 years earlier, his wife Isabella had been gunned down on a sunny afternoon in front of their brownstone in Cobble Hill. Drive-by, 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the head. Clean, professional. Their daughter, Mia, barely 3, had watched from the stoop, her little hand still clutching Isabella's skirt as the blood pooled. The papers called it a mob hit. Vincent knew better. It was Anthony Ricci, rival boss, head of a splinter crew out of Queens. Envious snake who'd lost territory in the 90 Seconds Wars and blamed Moretti for every dime he couldn't grab. Ricci had sent the message. Families aren't off limits. Vincent had buried Isabella in a quiet plot in Greenwood Cemetery, under a marble angel with wings spread wide. He hadn't cried at the funeral, not in front of his men. But alone, in the dark of his study, the Ghost whispered her name like a prayer he no longer believed in. Vincent moved through the world like a blade, sharp, silent, always angled for the kill. But the grief had hollowed him. He slept with a Beretta under his pillow, checked the rear view every block, made coded calls from burners he ditched after one use. Paranoia wasn't a flaw. It was survival. And on this night, hours before the storm would drive him to Grace's door, it coiled tight in his gut. The sit-down was set for 9 at Luigi's on Lexington, Upper East Side. Old-school Italian joint, red checkered tablecloths, Chianti bottles with candle wax dripping down the sides, garlic and tomato sauce thick in the air like a fog you could taste. The kind of place where deals got made over veal parmigiana and nobody asked for a receipt. Vincent arrived early, sliding into the back booth with a view of the door, the kitchen exit, and the street through the lace-curtained window. His driver, Marcus, dark-skinned, built like a linebacker, eyes that missed nothing, took a stool at the bar, nursing a club soda with lime. No alcohol, never on the job. Vincent ordered espresso black, no sugar. The cup was small, porcelain hot against his palm. He sipped slow, letting the bitter heat ground him. The restaurant hummed. Forks clinking on plates, low murmurs from couples at corner tables. Dean Martin crooning, "Ain't that a kick in the head?" from speakers hidden in the walls. But Vincent heard the undercurrents, the creak of the front door every time it opened, the shuffle of waitstaff feet, the faint jingle of keys in someone's pocket. He glanced at his watch. Rolex Submariner, matte black, no shine. 8:55. The door swung in. Anthony Ricci entered first, flanked by 2 of his crew. Ricci was mid-50s, stocky, with a gut that strained his silk shirt and a scar across his left cheek from a bar fight in the 80 seconds that he wore like a badge. His hair was dyed too dark, slicked back with pomade that smelled like cheap aftershave even from across the room. Envy burned in him like a slow fuse, lost his slice of the Jersey ports to Moretti's smoother operations back in '98. watched his crew shrink while Vincent's grew. Vengeance was his religion now. He'd ordered Isabella's hit to even the score, but Vincent had no proof. Not yet. Behind Ricci came Gino, tall, wiry, tattoos peeking from his collar, a smirk that never faded. And Tommy, short, bald, gold pinky ring flashing under the lights, the kind of guy who talked too loud and laughed at his own jokes. They scanned the room, eyes lingering a beat too long on Marcus, then settled into the booth across from Vincent. The waiter materialized, old guy named Sal. Been there, 30 years, poured water, dropped menus. Vanished. Vincent set his espresso down. The cup clicked against the saucer, sharp in the quiet bubble around the table. Anthony. Ricci leaned back, arms spread along the booth top like he owned the place. Vincent, been a while. You're looking tired. That kid of yours keeping you up. Subtle. The mention of Mia. Not a threat, but close enough to taste it. Vincent's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed flat. She's fine. Let's keep this business. Ricci chuckled, low and wet. He picked up the menu, scanned it without reading. Business, right. Heard you're moving on that warehouse deal down in Red Hook. Prime spot. Containers coming in from Rotterdam. Must be nice, ghosting in and out like that. Gino snorted, leaning forward. His elbows hit the table with a thud. Ghosting. Yeah, that's what they call it. More like poaching. That spot was ours back in the day. Before you. Expanded. Vincent's eyes flicked to Gino, cold, assessing. Expanded? Or just smarter? Times change. Gino. Adapt, or get left. Tommy jumped in, voice a nasal Brooklyn bark. Smarter? Nah, luckier. You got the feds looking the other way. What, you got a guy in the DA's office now? Or is it that fancy lawyer from Midtown? The air thickened. The waiter hovered nearby, but Vincent waved him off with a subtle flick of fingers. No food. Not yet. He leaned in, voice low, the kind that cut without rising. You got something to say, Tommy? Say it. We're all friends here. Ricci raised a hand, playing peacemaker, but his eyes gleamed. Easy, boys. We're just talking. But yeah, Vincent, that Red Hook play cuts into my roots. I got trucks running through there, families depending on it. You step on toes, toes step back. Vincent checked the window, street outside wet with pre-storm drizzle, headlights slicing through. A black SUV idled across the way. Not his. He made a mental note. Nobody's stepping. It's open territory. Commission cleared it. Last sit down. Gino leaned closer, breath smelling of garlic from whatever he'd eaten before. Commission? That old boys club? Half them are in witness protection or 6 feet under. You think that means shit anymore? Vincent's hand rested on the table, fingers drumming once slow, deliberate. Under the table, his other hand brushed the ankle holster, the compact. 380 reassuring. Paranoia? No. Habit. It means what I say it means. You got a problem, take it up with them, not here. Tommy laughed too loud, drawing a glance from a couple at the next table. Take it up? Like how you took up with that doc boss last year? Guy ends up floating in the Gowanus. Real diplomatic. Ricci shot Tommy a look, shut up, but it was half-hearted. The disrespect hung in the air, thick as the marinara steam from the kitchen. Vincent felt it coil in his chest. These weren't just words, they were probes, testing for weakness. Since Isabella, the whispers had started, Moretti's soft, distracted, grieving widower hiding behind his walls. He sipped the espresso, cooled now, bitter on the tongue. You accusing me of something, Anthony? Ricci smiled, teeth yellow under the low lights. Accusing? Nah, just observing. You got the ghost rep untouchable. But ghosts fade, Vincent. Especially when they got baggage. That little girl of yours. Mia, right? Cute kid. Shame about the mom. There it was. The line crossed. Vincent's eyes narrowed, but he kept the mask. Inside, the grief flashed Isabella's laugh, her hand in his. The way she'd sing Mia to sleep with old Neapolitan lullabies. Gone. Because of this man. But no proof. Not yet. Watch your mouth, Vincent said, voice like gravel under tires. Gino smirked again. Or what? You gonna ghost us too? The table went still. Dean Martin faded out, replaced by Sinatra's New York, New York. The front door opened, a gust of wind, rain starting to pick up. Vincent glanced, 2 more of Ricci's guys outside, smoking under the awning. He pulled his phone, a burner Nokia, no frills from his pocket, flipped it open under the table, thumbed a quick text. Eyes on Lex. Black Tahoe. Plate? Marcus caught his eye from the bar, nodded imperceptibly. Riki noticed. Calling reinforcements? Paranoid much? Vincent snapped the phone shut. Cautious. You should try it. Might have saved you that scar. Richi's hand twitched toward his cheek, then dropped. Funny, but let's cut the bullshit. Red Hook. You back off, or we got problems. Vincent set the cup down again, click. Problems? Like the kind that hit cars on the street? In front of kids? The booth tensed. Tommy's hand drifted toward his waistband. Gino's smirk faded. Richi's eyes went flat cold, vengeful. The envy boiled over. The man who'd clawed from nothing only to watch Moretti take the crown. You got no proof, Ricci said softly. Don't need it, Vincent replied. Yet. Silence, stretched. The waiter approached hesitant now. Gentlemen, ready to order? Ricci stood first, chair scraping back loud on the tile. Nah, appetite's gone. He tossed a 20 on the table, insult. Like Vincent couldn't cover his own tab. Think about it, Ghost. Families are fragile. Gino and Tommy followed, Gino bumping the table on purpose, water glasses sloshing. They filed out, door slamming behind. Vincent sat still, watching through the window as they piled into the SUV, the same one he'd spotted. It pulled away, slow, taillights red in the rain. Marcus slid into the booth across from him. Coded call? Vincent nodded. Trail them, quiet, and check the house. Mia's nanny's on tonight. Marcus stood, left without a word. Vincent finished the espresso cold now. The bitterness lingered. Paranoia? No. Instinct. Ricci's crew had shown their hand, subtle digs, veiled threats, betrayal brewing. He felt it in the air, thick as the storm clouds gathering outside. He paid the bill cash. No change, stepped into the night. Rain slicked the sidewalk, neon from the pizzeria across the street reflecting in puddles. He checked the rear view as Marcus pulled up in the Mercedes habit. Always. The city blurred past. Doormen under awnings, yellow cabs splashing through curbside rivers, steam rising from manhole covers like ghosts from the underground. Back at the estate on Long Island, gated, cameras everywhere, floodlights cutting the dark. Vincent checked on Mia. She slept peaceful, brown curls fanned on the pillow, teddy bear clutched tight. He smoothed her hair, whispered, Daddy's here. But the paranoia didn't fade. Coded calls to his capos. Watch, Ricci's moves, eyes on Queens. The Ghost knew rivalries didn't end at sit-downs. They simmered, and when they boiled over, blood ran. Little did he know. In hours, a fever would force his hand. A storm would drive him into the night, and a door in Brooklyn would open to change everything. The estate loomed like a fortress carved from shadow and stone, tucked away on the eastern edge of Long Island, where the sprawl of Queens gave way to manicured lawns and iron gates that whispered warnings to anyone who approached. 3 stories of white limestone, columns thick as ancient oaks flanking the entrance, balconies wrapped in wrought iron that twisted like veins. The grounds stretched out in a calculated sprawl, velvet green lawns clipped to perfection. A marble fountain gurgling crystal water day and night. Rose bushes pruned into submission, their thorns hidden beneath blooms of blood-red petals. But it wasn't a home. It was a bunker. Security cameras perched on every corner like watchful crows. Red lights blinking in the dark. Motion sensors hummed faintly. Invisible tripwires threading the perimeter. Men in black suits patrolled the edges silent, armed, eyes scanning the horizon as if enemies lurked in every rustle of leaves. Grace Mitchell had been there 2 weeks now, and the luxury still felt like a dream wrapped in barbed wire. Her room on the 2nd floor was a world away from the Brooklyn walk-up king bed with Egyptian cotton sheets that whispered against her skin, a walnut armoire filled with clothes she hadn't bought, a private bath where the marble tub gleamed under recessed lights, steam from the shower carrying the faint scent of lavender soap. But every morning, she woke to the same unease. The soft click of a door locking somewhere down the hall, the murmur of voices on radios, the distant bark of guard dogs straining against their chains. She'd taken the job for Mia. $8,000 a month, room and board, health insurance for her and Maggie, enough to move her grandmother to a facility with round-the-clock care. Specialists in crisp white coats, gardens where Maggie could sit and watch the birds without worrying about the next bill. But Grace wasn't blind. She knew who Vincent Moretti was now. The ghost. The headlines she'd scrolled through on her old phone that first week after he left the cash and the card. Grainy photos outside courthouses. Whispers of murders unsolved. Empires built on blood and silence. She'd hidden the business card in a drawer, but the knowledge stayed, a cold weight in her chest. That morning, sunlight slanted through the lace curtains, painting gold stripes across the hardwood floor. Grace dressed quickly jeans, a simple blouse, sneakers that squeaked faintly on the polished oak. She stepped into the hallway, the air cool and still, carrying the faint polish of lemon wax from the maids who moved like ghosts themselves. Mia's room was 3 doors down, pink walls adorned with fairy lights, a canopy bed draped in white tulle. The little girl was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the rug, braids tied with pink ribbons, drawing with crayons that smelled waxy and new. Grace. Mia's face lit up, brown eyes shining like polished chestnuts. She scrambled up, tiny arms wrapping around Grace's waist, face pressed into her hip. The hug was fierce, trusting, the child's warmth seeping through the fabric like sunlight on a cold day. Grace knelt, pulling her close. Mia smelled like baby shampoo and strawberries from last night's dessert. "Good morning, sweetheart. What are you drawing?" "My family." Mia held up the paper stick figures in crayon. A tall man with dark hair, a small girl, and a woman with yellow scribbles for blonde locks. "That's Daddy. Me. And you." Grace's throat tightened. She traced the figures with her finger, the paper crinkling softly. "It's beautiful, Mia. But what about your mommy?" Mia's smile faded, eyes dropping to the floor. "Mommy's in heaven. She watches, but she can't come back. So now I have you." The words were matter of fact, but the tiny hand clutched Grace's tighter, nails digging in just a little. Grace felt the conflict twist inside her like a knot of barbed wire pulling taut. Fear whispered, "Run. This world is poison. Men with guns, forbidden doors, a boss who kills." But love answered, "Stay." For her. For the girl who hadn't spoken in 2 years until that stormy night. Who now laughed and held on like Grace was the only anchor in a sea of loss. They ate breakfast in the grand dining room, crystal chandelier overhead. Table long enough for 20 but set for 3. The chef had prepared French toast dusted with powdered sugar, fresh berries gleaming like jewels, coffee steaming in porcelain cups. Vincent joined them briefly, suit impeccable, hair combed back, but his eyes carried shadows. He kissed Mia's forehead, murmured something about a meeting in the city, then left with Marcus trailing like a shadow. Grace watched him go, the door clicking shut behind him, locks engaging with a soft electronic beep. After breakfast, they played in the garden. The air smelled of cut grass and damp earth, bees droning lazily around the roses. Mia chased butterflies, her laughter pealing like bells, but Grace couldn't shake the eyes on them. 2 guards stood at the perimeter, black suits, earpieces coiled like snakes, holsters bulging under jackets. One nodded to her, polite but distant. The other scanned the tree line, hand resting near his waist. "Grace, look." Mia called, holding up a ladybug on her palm. Red shell dotted black. Grace smiled, knelt beside her. "She's pretty. Be gentle, she might fly away." Mia nodded solemnly, watching the insect crawl across her skin. But Grace's gaze drifted to the east wing of the house, windows shuttered, doors always locked. Marcus had warned her on day 1. Basement, Mr. Moretti's office, guest house out back off limits. See nothing, hear nothing. That night, the unease deepened. Grace tucked Mia in, reading from a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, voice soft, pages turning with a whisper. Mia's eyes drooped, breaths evening out. Grace kissed her forehead, switched off the lamp, and slipped into the hall. The house was quiet, but not silent. Floorboards creaked under her feet. Somewhere below, a phone vibrated low, insistent. She paused at the top of the stairs, hand on the banister, cool wood smooth under her palm. Voices drifted up from the east wing, Vincent's office door ajar, just a crack. Light spilled out, yellow and harsh. "Ricci's moving," Marcus said, voice low, urgent. Tail on his crew spotted them at the docks. Trucks unloaded after dark. Could be product. Vincent's reply was ice calculated, calm, but cracking at the edges. Double the watch on the house. Mia's room, Grace's. No slips. Grace froze, breath caught. Her name, in that context. And the girl? Marcus asked. She's asking questions? She's fine. Vincent's chair scraped back leather on wood. But Ricci's probing. That sit-down was a test. He mentions Isabella again. He's dead. The word hung dead, cold, final. Grace's skin prickled, hairs rising on her arms. She backed away, silent as she could, but her sneaker caught a loose board creak. The voices stopped. She ran to her room, door shutting with a click, lock turning, heart pounding. She sank onto the bed, sheets cool against her back. Fear clawed. What have you done? Mafia. Murder. Run now. But Mia's face rose. Mia's hand in hers. Mia's whisper. You're warm like mommy. Love pulled back. Stay. She needs you. You need her. Days blurred into a rhythm laced with tension. Mornings in the playroom sunlight filtering through tall windows, toys scattered like colorful confetti. Mia built towers with blocks, giggling when they toppled. Grace joined, but her eyes flicked to the shadows guards outside the door, radios crackling faintly. One afternoon, clouds gathered over the sound, wind whipping the oaks. Grace and Mia baked cookies in the kitchen, flour dusting the marble counters, chocolate chips melting warm in the oven, scent of vanilla thick and sweet. Mia stood on a stool, stirring the batter with a wooden spoon that clacked against the bowl. Daddy likes chocolate, Mia said, tongue poking out in concentration. Grace smiled. Then we'll save him the biggest one. But as the timer buzzed sharp, insistent Grace heard the coded call. Vincent in the hall, phone to his ear. Eyes on Queens. Ricci's Tahoe plate matches. Trail, but quiet. No engagement. Her hands trembled as she pulled the tray from the oven, heat blasting her face. Mitts rough against her palms. Calculated calm, but cracking. Vincent's voice had edged higher, a hairline fracture in the stone. That evening, dinner in the dining room. Silverware clinked on china, candle flames flickering, casting long shadows on the walls. Vincent sat at the head, Mia to his right, Grace across. He cut Mia's chicken with precise strokes, but his eyes darted to the windows, curtains drawn, but wind rattling the panes. Everything okay? Grace asked, voice soft, fork hovering over her plate. Vincent met her gaze steel sharp, but weary. Business. Nothing for you. Mia chattered about the cookies, crumbs on her chin. But Grace saw the crack. Vincent's hand on his wine glass, knuckles white, glass stem threatening to snap. Later, alone in her room, Grace paced floorboards cool under bare feet, clock ticking like a heartbeat. Overheard commands echoed. Dead. Watch. Trail. Fear. Versus love. Run versus stay. She thought of Maggie now in the new facility. Smiling in photos Grace got via text. Safe because of this. But at what cost? The pressure built. Vincent's calm frayed more calls, more guards, eyes checking mirrors even inside the gates. Grace's unease grew shadows lengthening, forbidden wings calling like sirens. Internal war raged. Terror screamed danger. Affection whispered home. 1 midnight. It peaked. Grace woke thirsty, throat dry as sandpaper. She slipped downstairs, robe whispering against her legs. The kitchen loomed dark, fridge humming. But passing the east wing door cracked again, she heard it. I'm giving you one chance. Vincent's voice cold, stripped. Explain why you sold to Ricci. A man's plea. Mr. Moretti, please. Family, kids. I have a kid too. Thud fist on flesh. Groan. Mia nearly died because of you. Grace clamped her mouth, backed away shaking. Cold commands, calculated, cracking. She ran upstairs, curled under covers, conflict boiling. Fear won that night, tears silent, hot. But morning brought Mia's hug. Love's pull unbreakable. The story gets darker from here. The back room of Sal's Billiards in Astoria reeked of stale cigarette smoke and spilled beer. The kind of haze that clung to your skin and burned your eyes if you stayed too long. Dim bulbs swung from chains overhead, casting jittery shadows across scarred pool tables covered in green felt worn thin from years of hustles. The air was thick, humid, laced with the sharp tang of gun oil and the faint metallic bite of brass casings. Anthony Ricci sat at a rickety card table in the corner, legs splayed wide, a half-smoked Marlboro dangling from his lips. Ash dropped onto his silk shirt, unnoticed. Across from him hunched a weasel of a man named Frankie Thin, jittery, eyes darting like he expected a ghost to grab him by the throat. Frankie slid a brown paper bag across the table, the crinkle of it loud in the quiet room. Ricci snatched it, peeled it open with thick fingers scarred from old knife fights. Stacks of hundreds stared back crisp, bound in rubber bands. He thumbed through one, the bills whispering against his calluses. 10 grand, Frankie muttered, voice low and cracked. Like you asked. Clean, no cereals. Ricci grunted, eyes narrowing. He set the bag down with a soft thud, leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. Revenge burned in his gut, hot and constant, like acid reflux that never quit. 2 years since Isabella Moretti went down in that hail of bullets he'd ordered. He'd pictured Vincent breaking, then crumbling like the empire Ricci had lost piece by piece. But the ghost hadn't folded. He'd tightened his grip, squeezed Ricci's roots until they bled dry. Jersey Port's gone. Queens trucking skimmed. Every dime Vincent took felt like a personal stab. Ricci saw it in his dreams. Moretti's face, cold and untouchable, laughing as Ricci's crew scattered. Payback wasn't just business. It was survival. Take the kid. Break the man. Simple. Gino, Ricci barked, not looking up. Gino stepped from the shadows near the door, tall, wiry, ink crawling up his neck. He carried a black duffel, unzipped it on the table with a rasp of nylon. Inside, matte black Glocks, suppressors twisted off, magazines stacked like dominoes. The metal gleamed dull under the light, cold to the touch. Loaded? Ricci asked. Gino nodded, picked one up, slide racking back with a sharp click. Chamber empty for now. He slapped in a mag thunk, racked it again. Full hollow points. Vans gassed up out back. Tommy's got the route-mapped ice cream spot on the North Shore. 15 from the estate. They go every Tuesday. Ricci's internal fire flared. The blonde girl, Grace, they'd learned from a bot maid inside Moretti's walls. Unemployed nurse, poor as dirt, but she'd wormed into the ghost's world. Cared for the kid like her own. Ricci saw the weakness there. Vincent watching from doorways, eyes softening. Hit the girl, hit the kid, watch the empire crack. He stubbed out the cigarette in an ashtray overflowing with Butt's grind of glass on ash. Tommy, he called. Tommy waddled in from the hall, short, bald, pinky ring catching the light. Sweat beaded on his forehead, even in the cool room. He wiped it with a sleeve, hand trembling just a fraction. Boss? Ricci fixed him with a stare scar pulling tight on his cheek. You're on point. Block the road, yank the driver, grab the kid and the blonde. No mess, no witnesses. Tommy swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. And if she fights? Ricci's laugh was gravel. Then you make her stop. But alive. They're bait. Frankie shifted, chair scraping. Boss, Moretti's got tails. Guards. Ricci slammed a fist on the table, bang bag jumping. That's why we hit fast. Van in, van out. Dump 'em at the warehouse in Brooklyn. Then I call the ghost. Trade? Nah. Watch him come running, then end it. Inside, Ricci's thoughts churned. Vincent had taken everything territory. Respect. The life Ricci built from nothing in the 70 seconds. Scraping up from Bensonhurst streets. Immigrant kid, no English, but fists that spoke loud. Now, reduced to this smoky hole, plotting like a rat. But soon, blood for blood. Family for family. Gino zipped the duffel rasp. We roll in an hour. Ricci stood, joints popping. He pocketed a Glock weight, pulling his jacket. Revenge tasted close, metallic on his tongue. Let's bury the ghost. The afternoon sun hung low over Long Island, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold that filtered through the leaves of maples lining the quiet road. Grace sat in the back of the black SUV. Mia buckled beside her in a booster seat, chattering about flavors. The air inside was cool, AC humming softly, carrying the faint leather scent of the seats and Mia's bubblegum lip balm. Chocolate chip, Mia declared, kicking her feet against the seat. Her sneakers, pink with sparkles, thumped rhythmically. Grace laughed, ruffling her braids. And vanilla for me. With sprinkles? Mia nodded vigorously, brown eyes wide. Rainbow ones. The driver, Paul, one of Vincent's men, broad-shouldered with a crew cut, glanced in the rear view. 10 minutes out, Miss Mitchell. Grace nodded, but unease prickled her skin. She'd checked with Marcus, 2 guards in the follow car, black sedan trailing 50 yards back. Safe. But the estate's shadows lingered. Overheard whispers, Vincent's tense calls. She pushed it down. For Mia. The girl needed normal ice cream cones, dripping in the heat. Sticky fingers, laughter. The road curved gently, trees thickening on either side. Houses spaced far mansions behind gates, lawns manicured. Paul slowed for a stop sign, brakes sighing softly. Then it happened. A black van shot from a side street, no signal, tires screeching on asphalt. It swerved, blocking the road nose to nose with the SUV. Paul slammed the brakes, tires howling, Grace lurching forward, seatbelt biting her shoulder. Mia yelped, hands flying to her ears. "What the?" Paul growled, hand dropping to his hip holster. Grace's heart hammered, thud, blood rushing in her ears. "Paul? Stay down." He unbuckled, drew his Glock metal rasping from leather. Doors on the van flew open, 3 men in black hoodies, faces masked with balaclavas, eyes hard above the fabric. They moved fast, boots pounding pavement, shotguns and pistols glinting in the sun. "Out!" the lead one shouted, voice muffled, Brooklyn thick. He racked the shotgun ka-chunk barrel aimed at the windshield. Paul kicked his door open, fired once, cracked bullet pinging off the van's grill. The men scattered, returning fire pops like firecrackers, glass shattering on the driver's side. Grace screamed, threw herself over Mia, body shielding the girl. Mia whimpered, tiny hands clutching Grace's shirt, nails digging in. "Grace," scared. "It's okay, sweetheart," Grace whispered, voice shaking. Her hands trembled, cold sweat beading on palms as she fumbled the seatbelt. "I'm here." A masked man yanked the rear door, metal groaning. "Give us the kid." Grace kicked heel connecting with his knee. Crunch. He swore, staggered back. Paul grappled with another, fists thudding flesh, grunts echoing. A shot bang, Paul jerked, blood blooming on his shoulder. He dropped, gasping. The follow car screeched up, guards piling out, guns drawn. Freeze. Chaos erupted, more shots, bullets whining past. Grace huddled over Mia, air thick with cordite, sharp, burning. Mia sobbed wet gasps against Grace's chest. Like Mommy. Like when Mommy. Grace's mind flashed. Isabella's death. The trauma Mia carried. "Shh, no one's hurting you." But her own hands shook uncontrollably, fingers numb, pulse racing. The lead man lunged again, rough hands grabbing Grace's hair, yanking hard. Pain exploded, scalp burning, tears springing. "Out, bitch." She bit down, teeth sinking into his wrist, taste of salt and skin. He howled, pulled back, blood welling. "Fuck this." He raised his pistol barrel, black, endless, aimed at Grace's head, finger whitening on the trigger. Mia screamed high, piercing. The guards fired cracks, man dropping, clutching his leg. The others retreated, van doors slamming, engine roaring. Tires spun, gravel flying, van peeling away. Grace collapsed over Mia, breaths ragged. Her hands still trembled, beads of sweat dripping from forehead, stinging eyes. Mia clung, body racked with sobs, tiny frame heaving. "It's over," Grace murmured, voice cracking. But the terror lingered, Mia's wide eyes, the gun's cold stare. The trap sprung. And deep down, Grace knew. This was just the beginning.